Hello there. I'm your storyteller for tonight. Take a slow breath in through your nose and gently let it out. Let your shoulders soften. Let your hands rest. You've arrived in a quiet moment and you don't need to do anything at all. You are safe. You are welcome here. Tonight, we'll drift into a gentle world, one shaped by calm and soft imagination. Let your breath steady. Let your thoughts grow lighter. Settle in and allow the story to begin. It is early morning in a narrow street of a quiet town. The sky carries the soft grey of steady rain. Drops slide down iron railings and gather at the base of old brick walls. Inside a small workshop, a single lamp burns, pale and golden, turning the shelves of clocks into sleeping faces that glow and wait. The air smells of pine oil and paper. Every surface carries a thin dust that looks like time itself. The clockmaker, Mr. Alden, lifts the shutter from the window and lets the muted light enter. He is slow in every motion, not from age but from habit. He believes that time listens best to those who do not rush it. He sets his teapot on a narrow stove, adds a pinch of leaves, and waits for the sound of first boiling. Around him, the clocks begin their waking. Some tick, some hum, some stand silent, saving their rhythm for later. Beneath the lowest workbench, a drawer sits half open. In that drawer, curled within a small nest of wool, lies Mallow, a brown mouse no larger than a teacup, tidy in his ways and gentle in his thoughts. He opens one eye when the first chime stirs. The air is warm. The floor carries the faint vibration of gears beginning their quiet day. He stretches his paws, smooths his whiskers, and listens. Tick, pause, tick. Another beat farther away. Then the whisper of rain against glass. The workshop has its own weather, and he knows each sound by heart. He climbs to the lip of the drawer and peers into the open room. Mr. Alden stands at the bench, polishing a small brass wheel. His spectacles rest low on his nose, and the lamp above him reflects two circles of gentle fire. Mallow watches the way the man turns each piece between his fingers. No movement wasted, no noise louder than a breath. The rhythm comforts him. The clockmaker hums a low line of tune without words. It drifts through the air like smoke from the teapot. Mallow follows the sound to the edge of his drawer, jumps softly to the floor, and lands between two broad boards that sigh under his weight. The boards remember every step he has taken. He crosses to the tall clock near the window and presses an ear against the wooden frame. Inside, the pendulum begins its swing. The sound fills his chest. It is the kind of sound that steadies everything around it. He stays there, breathing in time with a slow return. Mr. Alden pours tea into a mug and lifts another cup beside it. He always pours two, though only one is ever used. The habit makes the room feel complete. He takes a small sip and lets the steam cloud his glasses. He writes a note in a narrow book, the date, the weather, and a single word, calm. He sets the pen aside and leans back on the stool. The workshop is a forest of tiny suns and soft reflections. On one shelf, a line of pocket watches gleams like dew on a branch. On another, rows of silent wall clocks wait with open faces. Mallow moves among them, tail low, steps even. He stops at the base of the bench, where a gear the size of a coin lies beside a folded cloth. He touches the metal and feels the chill that will soon become warmth when the clockmaker's hands return to it. A bird taps at the window. Finch, the small house sparrow, slips through the vent above the frame and lands on the corner beam. Raindrops fall from his feathers, and a single one lands on the lampshade. It hisses, then cools, leaving only a scent of wet dust. The bird chirps once, short and polite, then tucks one foot into his plumage. Mallow glances up and nods in his tiny way. Finch answers with a soft flutter, then stays still, content to share the silence. The three of them, man, mouse, bird, breathe in the same rhythm for a while. Only the clocks speak, and even they do so with courtesy. When the kettle gives its second sigh, Mr. Alden rises. He winds the clock by the door. The key turns slow, the spring accepts its strength, and the hands shift a fraction forward. He whispers something the mouse cannot hear but understands all the same. It is a blessing of patience. Mallow returns to his drawer and arranges a crumb of bread beside his wool. He eats a piece no larger than a seed, then sits, listening to the rain taper to a fine mist. The workshop smells of tea and brass. The tall clock marks each breath. Outside, the town still sleeps. Inside, time has begun again, not as command but as companion. He curls once more into the warmth and lets his eye grow heavy, not to sleep, but to listen. The sound of the pendulum is steady. The rain is softer now. The man hums under his breath. Somewhere above, the sparrow settles his wings. The day stretches forward with no demand. Only the quiet ticking carries it, step by step, into peace. The morning passes with the slow patience of rain. Light thickens behind the windows and spreads across the benches like thin milk poured over wood. The air hums with 100 faint pulses. Each clock chooses its own rhythm, yet none of them argue. Together they make the workshop breathe. Mallow wakes again when the kettle clicks. He sits upright in his drawer, whiskers forward. He knows this sound means another hour has slipped by. He climbs to the edge, lowers himself to the floor, and begins his small inspection of the world. Every morning he follows the same path, and every morning he finds it changed in some tiny way. A new shadow, a gear turned, a cup moved half an inch closer to the window. Mr. Alden stands over the long bench near the back wall. He has rolled up his sleeves. The thin fabric shows the motion of muscles trained by gentle repetition. In front of him lies a heavy clock case of dark walnut. The varnish is worn, the glass cloudy. It looks older than most of the others. He runs a finger across the face and lifts the lid. A faint, metallic sigh escapes, as if the clock itself remembers sound. Inside, gears rest like frozen stars. The balance wheel hangs at an angle. He studies the mechanism in silence, then murmurs a few quiet words. Not disappointment, only greeting. He sets the case upright and tilts the lamp so its light reaches into the cavity. Mallow crouches under a stool and watches. The man traces a wire with the tip of a screwdriver. He nods slowly, almost smiling. "Lost its heart," he whispers. Then he writes the same words in his notebook. His script is careful, small loops, neat slant. He leaves the page open beside the clock. Mallow tilts his head. A clock with a missing heart. He tries to imagine where hearts hide inside machines. Perhaps in the wheel that turns the others, or in the smallest gear that no one sees. He creeps closer, his paws silent on the wood. The smell of oil is strong, but clean. He peers up through the shadow under the bench and sees the gap near the lower plate. Something is gone from there, a round space of dust where brightness used to live. A sound from above makes him pause. Finch has returned, tapping at the side window. The bird shakes the water from his feathers, then flutters down to the bench rail. He carries something glinting in his beak, a fragment of brass curved like a crescent moon. He drops it beside the open notebook. Mr. Alden looks up. He blinks behind his lenses, then smiles at the small gift. "What have you brought, little friend?" he says softly. He picks up the fragment between his fingers. The piece is thin, half polished, one edge smooth, the other rough. He holds it near the lamp. The brass catches the glow and throws a thin beam across the workbench. He turns it once, twice, then places it beside the old clock. The workshop falls into that deep quiet again, the kind that exists between steady sounds. The tall clock keeps its pulse. The wall clocks mark their slower phrases. Mallow feels the air become a net of soft rhythm. He moves closer to the bench leg and looks up at the fragment. It shines like something that belongs to a story. He wonders if this could be the heart the clock has lost. Mr. Alden does not hurry. He writes another note beneath the first. "Keep aside for fitting." Then he closes the book and lets his hand rest on the cover. He leans back, closes his eyes for a moment, and listens to the rain. The droplets tap on the glass with no fixed tempo, yet somehow they join the clocks in their gentle weave. Mallow climbs onto the low shelf below the bench. From here, he can see the motion of the man's breath, in and out, slow and sure. The lamplight glows through the rising steam from the second cup of tea. The scent of leaves drifts through the room, warm and earthy. The mouse feels his small heartbeat begin to match the larger rhythm of the space. Finch hops once, sending a ripple of tiny shadows across the bench. The movement startles nothing. Even the flame stays steady. The bird tucks its head and closes one eye. Outside, the street hums with carts rolling over damp stones. The world beyond the window feels far away, as though the glass divides two versions of time. One that hurries, one that breathes. Mr. Alden reaches for a cloth, wipes the brass piece gently, and sets it back beside the clock case. He does not yet try to fit it. He believes that some repairs require the patience of silence. He lets the object stay in sight, trusting that the answer will come on its own. He turns off the lamp and opens the door for a moment. Fresh air enters, cool and wet. The smell of rain fills the room and folds into the scent of metal. Mallow watches from the shelf as the man closes the door again and locks it loosely, a gesture more of habit than caution. The sound of the latch is soft. The workshop returns to its inner weather. The clocks breathe together. The little brass crescent waits. Mallow lowers himself to the floor. He sits near the base of the wall and listens. He can hear the difference now. All the other clocks beating and this one silent. He thinks of the word heart and how it feels inside his chest when the tall clock swings. He decides that if something can lose its heart, maybe it can also find it again. He curls his tail around his paws and stays there until the rain turns from steady to whisper. The window glows dim. The room grows warm. Mr. Alden's pen scratches a final line somewhere behind him, a faint sound like footsteps fading down a quiet road. The mouse closes his eyes, breathing in the scent of brass and tea, and listens to the one clock that does not yet tick, waiting for the moment when it will. Afternoon arrives without edges, the kind of hour that slips into the room as a warmer shade of grey. The rain loosens and gathers, then loosens again, not tired, only thoughtful. The lamps breathe at a lower glow. The tall clock keeps the room together, its pendulum drawing a slow arc like a calm hand smoothing a page. The other clocks answer with patient steps, each one honouring the space between beats. Mr. Alden finishes his tea and sets the cup near the open notebook. He does not close the book. He lets the words rest there as if they need air. Keep aside for fitting. The brass crescent lies on the folded cloth, quiet as a small moon on a clean shore. He wipes his glasses and leans closer to the old walnut case. He does not touch the piece. He only studies the path where it might belong, and he listens for a thought that does not use words. Mallow leaves the shelter of the lower shelf and crosses the floor. The boards remember him and do not complain. He moves in a line that has become his map. Bench leg to tall stool to baseboard to the little gap beneath the drawer. He pauses at the stool and looks up. From here he can see the side of the workshop that holds the wall clocks, a quiet field of pale faces and dark hands. Some are wound, some are waiting, none are lost. He stands and counts 2 beats with the tall clock before he goes on. Finch has found a place near the window latch, feathers rounded, one eye open, one eye resting. The bird's breath is quick but not anxious. Every few minutes he untucks his head and gives a short, soft call, as if to say, "I am here," and then he settles again. A dot of rain clings to the iron latch and becomes a tiny lens, and through that lens the street turns to a blur of silver lines. Mr. Alden opens a narrow drawer and lifts a strip of thin leather. He runs it between finger and thumb and nods. He rolls the leather into a loop and sets it aside. He will need it later, or perhaps not, but it is good to let tools wait where they can be seen. He adjusts the lamp by a hair's width, and in that new light the inside of the clock seems deeper, the metal darker at the edges, the empty space more itself. Mallow approaches the bench leg and pauses. He knows that afternoon is the hour for observation. Morning is for waking, evening is for closing, and afternoon is for learning. He climbs the small angle brace and settles near the folded cloth that smells of oil and careful hands. He sits very still. He watches the way the room moves without moving. The old walnut case holds its silence. It is not the silence of refusal. It is the silence of listening. Mallow can feel it the way he feels the warmth from the lamp. Not on the skin, but behind it. He imagines how the gears will speak when their voice returns, not loud, not proud, only steady. He lets that imagined sound fill the space in his chest, where worries sometimes try to gather. And he finds there is no room left for worry now. Outside, a cart passes with soft wooden knocks, and then another, and then the street grows thin again. Somewhere beyond the window, a door closes as if it is made of cloth. The town has learned weather the way the workshop has learned time. Not as a problem, only as a companion. A child's laugh lifts and fades, already a memory by the time it reaches the glass. Mr. Alden places his hand lightly on the bench and counts 3 breaths. He closes his eyes. He lets his shoulders drop. He opens his eyes and writes a single line beneath the last. Listen longer. He taps the end of the pen on the margin once, twice, and sets it down. He checks the tall clock, not because he doubts it, but because attention is a kind of thanks. Mallow studies the tiny screws along the lower plate. He learns their pattern the way he learns the lines of the floor. He could find them again, in darkness now. He shifts his weight and looks toward the little pile of parts on the cloth. Springs, a pin like a thread of light, a washer that is almost too thin to see. The brass crescent rests apart from the others, not banished, only honoured. Finch spreads one wing and lets it fall, sending a sigh of dust from the beam to the bench, a soft drifting that looks like a lazy snowfall over a small country. The room keeps its quiet language. The lamp hums a word. The metal answers. The wooden cases keep counsel. When Mr. Alden moves, the air follows him in an easy ripple. He wipes the rim of the old case, then stops before the cloth makes a second pass. Enough. He smiles a little at that word. Enough is an art. He steps back, lifts the second cup, and remembers it is empty. He fills the kettle and waits without looking at it. He reads the notebook instead, and in reading it, he does not search for wisdom. He simply returns to the place where his thoughts were last seen. Mallow feels the pull of the tall clock and steps down from the brace. He walks along the baseboard and rests with his side against the warm wood. He can sense the pendulum through the panel, a steady weight drawing a slow line through the air, forward and home, forward and home. He sets his breath to that same pace. He imagines that every swing is a kindly sweep of a broom across a dusty floor inside his mind, making room for calm to sit a while longer. The kettle murmurs, then yields its sharp little song. Mr. Alden removes it at once, not a second of boiling more than is needed. He pours water over the leaves and leans on the counter, waiting while the steam makes the window fog. Finch gives a tiny complaint, then forgives the moment and returns to his single eye of rest. The man lifts the pot and tips a measure into his cup. A leaf rides the surface, circles once, then stills. The brass crescent glows and dims with each sway of the lamp. Mallow steps toward it and stops at a respectful distance. He does not touch it. He studies the smooth edge and the rough edge, and how the roughness looks less like a flaw and more like a history. He wonders how many hours and days live inside the marks on that metal. He thinks about time as a thing that can be seen, then lets the thought pass because he prefers it, as a thing that can be felt. Rain returns in a fine weave, thin threads on glass. Mr. Alden opens the door a finger's width to trade a breath of air with the street, then closes it. He walks the length of the workshop, tall clock to wall clocks to bench, a slow patrol of a small country he loves. He listens at 3 points, nods once at nothing, and sits. He takes the brass crescent in hand, holds it near the opening where the clock is quiet, and then sets it down again. Not yet. The word is not a refusal. It is a welcome that asks for one more moment. Mallow understands that word. Not yet is a kind of kindness. It means there will be a time when the waiting itself becomes part of the cure. He turns and looks toward his drawer, then decides to stay where he is. Afternoon keeps its hold on the room, the hour stretched like a soft ribbon that will not break. Finch wakes fully, hops to the bench rail, and regards the cloth where the parts are gathered. He pecks once at a thread and lets it go. He tips his head and studies the clock face. The hands do not move, yet the face is not empty. It holds the memory of movement the way a beach holds the shape of a wave after the water has slid back to sea. The bird's chest lifts in quick pulses. He gives a sound so small it might be a kind of agreement. Mr. Alden takes a breath that is almost a sigh and reaches for the folded cloth. He cleans the lamp glass with slow circles until the flame shines clear. He wipes the bench, corner to corner. He draws a line with his finger through a thin dust near the edge and smiles at the mark, as if he has signed his name in a language the room can read. He sets the cloth down so its fold points toward the old clock, a gesture that looks like an arrow and feels like a blessing. Mallow steps back and takes in the whole, not just the part. The walls, the shelves, the tall clock with its listening heart, the silent case waiting for a rhythm to return, the man in his patient chair, the bird near the window, the rain beyond the glass that does not insist on being noticed yet, is always there. He feels a stillness rise through him that has nothing to do with staying put. It is the stillness that comes when everything is in the right place, even if one thing is not moving yet. The light lowers 1 degree. The lamps answer with a warmer tone. Shadows soften at the edges. Mr. Alden lifts the notebook again and writes a final line for the hour. Soon, perhaps. He leaves the page open. He lets the ink dry without hurry. He takes the brass crescent one more time and gives it the smallest turn between finger and thumb. He listens, he waits, he puts it back. Mallow returns to the baseboard and sits with his tail around his paws. He closes his eyes and follows the pendulum breath. In, out, in, out. The room makes a careful promise to the evening, and the evening, not yet arrived, nods from the doorway. The clocks continue, not louder, not softer, only sure. The old walnut case keeps its silence like a shell keeps the sea. The mouse, the bird, the man, and the room rest in the same simple truth. Waiting is also movement, when it is done with love. Evening folds itself along the window glass. The grey turns to a blue that carries no cold, only depth. Lamps rise a little in answer. The tall clock holds its calm law at the centre of the room. The wall clocks keep their own small paths like planets that know the weight of their stars. The old walnut case waits on the bench with its back open to the warm light. The brass crescent rests nearby, a soft curve on a square of cloth, a quiet moon on a quiet field. Mr. Alden stands and smooths the front of his apron with both palms. He looks at the notebook, where the last line reads soon, perhaps. He closes the book by touching only the edge, as if the words were delicate and should not be disturbed. He lifts the lamp and angles it, so the shadow inside the case becomes a shallow pool rather than a cave. He breathes in, he breathes out, and the room seems to follow. Mallow sits near the base of the bench leg. He lifts his face to the light and watches the hands that know this table better than any map. He sees how the man does not reach for the crescent at once. He checks the hinge, the plate, the wire that hums when a finger draws close. He listens to the silence and decides that the silence is ready. Then he turns, and only then, he gathers the small moon of brass into his hand. Finch wakes and hops to the rail. His head tilts, one eye bright, one eye soft. He makes no sound. He understands without words that a room can hold its breath and still feel gentle. The rain has become a long lace of quiet, thread on thread, almost too fine to see. It hangs there and does not fall. Mr. Alden chooses a tool with a narrow tip. He rests the crescent on it as if the tool were a bridge and the crescent a traveller. He brings it to the opening by degrees. He does not push. He does not insist. He lets the shape of the piece find the shape of its home. A pause, the softest turn, a breath that is held for the length of a heartbeat and then let go. The edge meets the rim of the plate. The curve settles with a hush that is not a sound, only a change in the air, a lightness that arrives at the back of the tongue. Mallow feels the change under his paws. The bench seems to lower itself a grain, as if relaxing from a long day of standing. The lamp warms. The tall clock answers with no more than a single degree of kindness, which is to say, it continues exactly as it has been, and yet the mouse senses a welcome in that steady beat. He inches forward and sits very still. He does not blink. He does not breathe for one small count, and then he breathes again. Mr. Alden sets the tool down, not on the cloth, not on the bare wood, but on the small metal strip meant for tools at rest. He closes his fingers once and opens them, releasing the work from the work. He lowers his face to the open back of the case and looks. He looks with a sort of attention that adds nothing and removes nothing. He nods, a gesture so small it becomes part of the lamplight. He touches the pendulum with a fingertip that barely exists. The first pass is a thought, forward, returning. The second is a memory of a field, of a wind that moved the tall grass one way and then another and then home. The third is a promise, quiet and kept. Somewhere deep in the walnut box, a gentle beat stands up and shakes the sleep from its shoulders. It is not loud, it is not quick, it is not proud. It is present. It begins to belong. Finch gives a single breath of sound, the briefest trill, and then is silent again. The tall clock keeps its constant river. One wall clock drifts a fraction, and then returns to meet the new voice, as if the room had shifted its weight from one foot to the other and found both feet firm. The little parts on the cloth seem to listen. The notebook on the bench seems to listen. The steam from the cooling cup seems to listen, as it vanishes into the blue of evening. Mallow feels the beat move through the boards into his bones. It is a low note that does not need a name. He knows he will remember it. He knows that if he wakes in the middle of some future night, and the world is large and the mouse inside his chest is quick, he will be able to call this beat to him, and it will come, and he will sit in its company until his breath lengthens again. Mr. Alden closes the back of the case with 2 turns of the small key. He slides the latch into place. He wipes the rim with the clean end of the cloth, not to make it shine, only to remove the last trace of indecision. He lifts the clock and brings it to the wall where a pale circle has waited. He hangs it by the hook that remembers the weight of years. He steps back. He folds his hands together and listens with his eyes before he listens with his ears. The room aligns, not sharply, not like a line snapped taut, but like a shore that receives a tide and recognizes the tide as a friend. The beats so far apart become a weave. The weave becomes a soft garment thrown over the shoulders of the evening. Finch tucks his head for a moment and then looks again. He is satisfied in the way of small creatures who know when a place is good and when a place is very good. Mallow walks along the baseboard and stops beneath the new old beat. He watches the hands shift the smallest space. He thinks of the page in the notebook that said lost its heart. He thinks of the line that said keep aside for fitting. He wonders what the next line will be. He does not need to read it. He knows it will be a line that belongs to this hour, and that is enough. Mr. Alden returns to the bench and sits. He opens the book and writes. Found again. He does not erase. He does not cross out. He lets the day hold both truths, because both were true when they were written, and neither truth harms the other. He closes the book and rests his hand on the cover for the length of one slow breath. He leaves the book where the lamp can see it, which is to say he leaves it where he will see it in the morning. The rain outside is a map with no roads. It guides no one, and yet everyone who passes finds their way. A cart rolls by with a wheel that clicks once each turn, and for a time that click joins the room and then moves on. A door opens somewhere far and lets out a line of laughter that has forgotten why it began. It fades and does not return. The workshop stays itself. Mr. Alden rinses the cups and dries them. He sets the second cup upside down on its small saucer. He straightens the cloth and returns the tools to their patient places. He lowers one lamp and raises another by the slightest measure. A balance learned by doing the same kind thing for years. He touches the tall clock in thanks, and the tall clock continues, which is its way of saying you are welcome. Mallow climbs the leg of the bench and stands by the corner where the cloth meets the wood. He looks at the brass crescent, now part of the whole, and feels the ease in the air. He did not fit the piece. He did not turn the screws. Yet he shares in the quiet of the result, and that feels like the right kind of belonging. He thinks of Finch and his bright gift. He thinks of the way a day can be made by a small bringing. Finch ruffles, then slips to the beam above the window and closes both eyes. His body learns the new beat as if it were a branch under his feet. He sways a fraction and stills. He is asleep in the honest way of birds that live near kind hands. The window glass holds the last light of blue, and then holds the dark, and neither one is a burden. Mr. Alden walks to the door and turns the sign to the night side. He does not turn the key. He rests his fingers on the knob and then lets go. He returns to the center of the room and stands with his hands behind his back. He listens as the beats count him alive. He breathes in, he breathes out, and with the out-breath, he smiles. He takes the stool and sits for a while longer. Not to do anything, only to be here when the hour changes. He likes to be present at such small ceremonies. The mouse settles on the bench brace and lets his muscles loosen one by one. The beat of the new old clock passes through the brace and into his pores. The tall clock draws its constant arc. The wall clocks form a meadow of sound. The air is warm without asking the fire to work. The oil lamp has learned the exact flame that neither grows nor shrinks. Nothing strains, nothing argues, everything accepts. Evening becomes night in a soft fold, and the fold leaves no crease. Mr. Alden lifts the notebook again, not to write, only to hold it. He puts it down, not because it is heavy, only because the moment is light enough to be carried in the body. He stands. He turns the lamp down 1 degree. He gathers the cloth, folds it once, then once more, and lays it so the clean edge points toward the door, as if to say that tomorrow will arrive and be welcomed. Mallow returns to the floor and walks the long, smooth path to his drawer. He does not hurry. He passes the tall clock and leans his shoulder to the panel and lets the pendulum give him a good night that is not a word. He reaches the drawer and climbs the face like a low hill. He slips inside and settles into the wool that remembers his shape. He turns one way, then the other, and then finds the middle. He closes his eyes. He listens for the new beat. He hears it. He knows it will be there when he wakes. The workshop holds. The street quiets. The rain chooses a slower stitch. The lamps hold their soft gold. The notebook rests. The wall clock hands make their patient walk and do not tire, because they are not in a race, they are in a life. The night might bring a wind, or it might not. It might bring a far bell, or it might not. It will bring morning, but morning is not invited yet. For now there is only the room, the clocks, the man, the mouse, the bird, and the gentle truth that time, when kept with love, keeps those who keep it. Night deepens like ink poured into clear water. It spreads without hurry and fills the edges of the room until only the soft gold of the lamps remains. Their light gathers in small pools along the benches and on the faces of the clocks. The sound inside the workshop has changed again. The beat of each pendulum feels slower, not in pace, but in purpose, like breath that has found its rhythm after a long day. Mr. Alden sits on the tall stool by the centre bench. His hands rest open on his knees. He is not working, not waiting. He is listening. The steady sound of the new old clock blends with the others until all distinction disappears. It is one voice now, calm and sure. He looks around the room as if greeting old friends after a quiet dinner. His gaze stops at the wall where the walnut case hangs, its face glowing faintly in the lamplight. He nods once, not as approval, only as gratitude. The rain outside has become a faint shimmer, barely enough to notice. The town lies folded in damp sleep. No footsteps, no wheels, only the hush of water moving along gutters and stone. A window on the far side of the street shows a single square of light. It belongs to another life, but it does not intrude. It simply keeps company with the dark. Mallow lifts his head from the wool nest and blinks into the dimness. His small nose twitches, reading the air. It smells of metal, tea, and something gentle like paper drying near warmth. He climbs to the rim of the drawer and looks out. The workshop is a landscape of shadow and steady glow. The clocks move like slow rivers, unseen but heard. He stretches, yawns without sound, and lets his tail trace a line behind him. He walks down the leg of the bench, quiet as falling dust. His paws meet the cool boards of the floor. The tall clock stands near him, like a living tree in a night forest. He leans his side against its base and listens. Inside, the pendulum moves through air with the grace of breath. Each swing is both question and answer. The sound fills his chest and clears it. Mr. Alden stands, crosses to the sink, and rinses the last cup of the day. He dries it on a cloth and sets it upside down upon its plate. 2 cups, both clean, both waiting. He takes the kettle off the stove and empties the little water that remains. Then he turns the lamp above the bench 1 degree lower. The wick flickers, steadies, and holds. Finch stirs from his place on the beam. His feathers rustle softly like pages being turned. He shifts his feet, stretches a wing, and gives a short chirp that sounds like a sigh. He peers down at the man, at the mouse, at the wall of clocks that glow and tick and breathe. His head sinks into his chest again. He falls back into that thin border between waking and sleep. Mallow continues his walk, tracing the room's familiar path. He passes the tall stool, the row of drawers, the cluster of pocket watches lined like small suns along the shelf. He stops beneath the wall where the repaired clock hangs. He sits and watches the second hand move its slow circuit. It is not a race, but a circle of comfort. He feels the rhythm reach him like warmth through fur. Mr. Alden steps closer to the clock and whispers something the mouse cannot hear. It might be nothing. It might be thank you. He turns back to the centre bench and takes up his notebook. He writes the date and then 1 short sentence. Time kept itself well tonight. He sets the book down and leaves it open to dry. The lamp near the window lowers itself as oil runs low. Its flame shrinks into a narrow tongue. barely touching the glass. The light that remains feels more like memory than fire. The rain gives a final hush and stops completely. The silence that follows is not empty. It is full of small life. The breath of wood, the hum of cooling metal, the soft pulse of the clocks continuing in their endless kind agreement. Mallow climbs the bench brace and pauses halfway, watching the man prepare the room for rest. He sees each motion carried out with devotion, not obligation. Tools are placed in straight lines, cloths folded, surfaces cleared of dust with the sweep of a careful hand. There is no noise sharper than a heartbeat. The air smells of clean wood and faint smoke. Mr. Alden extinguishes the first lamp, then the second. Only one remains by the tall clock. He lowers its flame to a soft gold, the color of safety. The light touches his hands, his shirt, the grain of the floor, then fades toward the wall. He looks around once more, then nods. Everything is as it should be. He walks to the door, turns the sign to its night side, and leaves the key on the shelf beside it. He stands for a moment, hand on the knob, and listens. The rhythm inside the room continues steady and sure. He leaves the door unlocked. There is nothing here that needs guarding. He steps back and sits once more, his shoulders easing into stillness. Mallow returns to his drawer and curls into the soft fold of wool. The material holds the warmth of the day, faint but kind. He circles once, then twice, until the shape feels right. His eyes half close. The beats around him merge into one slow lullaby. He imagines the pendulum of the tall clock as the breath of the room, drawing in the dark, exhaling calm light. Finch dreams above the window. The man breathes quietly in his chair. The mouse breathes from his nest. Between them, the sound of ticking fills the space where words would otherwise go. It is the simplest music, and it is enough. Outside, the street gathers mist. A cat steps over a puddle and disappears between fences. A lamplight flickers and goes still. Somewhere far off, a train hums through the valley. It sounds so low it could be a thought. The night accepts it all and keeps its shape. Inside, the workshop glows faintly from within, as if the clocks themselves were tiny lanterns. The rhythm they keep is steady, protective, alive. The old walnut case holds its heart again. The tall clock watches over them all. The air is warm and still. Mr. Alden closes his eyes. His breath matches the clock's. Mallow's small heartbeat finds the same rhythm. Finch lifts his head once, then rests it under his wing. The room becomes one long, slow inhale that never needs to end. Time, gentle and faithful, continues its quiet work. It holds the people and the small lives that trust it. It keeps the night soft, the air safe, and the silence deep. Morning will come when it is ready. For now, there is nothing to do but rest.